We have two pieces of breaking news here. The first is that the Ethics Committee has voted on whether to move forward with the release of the ethics report, purporting to include highly damaging information about Matt Gaetz, and this is what happened.
In fact, we had agreed that we were not going to discuss what had transpired at the meeting, but it has come to my attention that the chairman has since betrayed the process by disclosing our deliberations within moments after walking out of the committee. And he has implied that there was an agreement of the committee not to disclose the report. That is an untrue, to the extent that that suggests that the committee was in agreement or that we had a consensus on that, that is inaccurate. And I will say that a vote was taken. As many of you know, this committee is evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans, 5 Dems, 5 Republicans, which means that in order to affirmatively move something forward, somebody has to cross party lines and vote with the other side, which happens a lot, by the way, and we often vote unanimously. That did not happen in today's vote, and I do not want the American public or anyone else to think that Mr. Gaetz's characterization of what transpired today would be some sort of indication that the committee had unanimity or consensus on this issue, not to release the report. That would be an inaccurate portrayal, and nobody should take that from what they have heard so far. There was no consensus on this issue. We did agree that we would reconvene as a committee on December 5th to further consider this matter. And this statement that I have just made is on behalf of all of the Democratic members of the Ethics Committee.
That comes in the aftermath of Republican Chair Michael Gaetz offering something of a different explanation to Manu Raju of CNN.
Have you heard from Trump or his team at all about this?
Not heard from President Trump or any member of his team.
There are two options, he said.
Well, no, what I said is I view a public release versus a conversation about transmittal to the Senate. I think those are separate conversations that the committee needs to discuss.
Is the report actually done at this point?
The report is not complete.
It's not.
That's correct.
And so how could you possibly release it if it's not done?
That is something that we will be talking about today. And that's another reason I have some reservations about releasing any unfinished work product.
How far would you say it is from its completion?
It has not gone through the review process.
Now, Democrats say that the report is essentially ready for release. So there's a disagreement between members on this panel. There's concerns about Democrats. The Republicans are trying to bury this report and prevent it from becoming public.
And now, with the benefit of hindsight, it is clear that Michael Gaetz was misrepresenting the position of the committee in what clearly is a coordinated effort by Republicans to do Trump's bidding and protect Matt Gaetz and his Attorney General nomination. Not for nothing, but if you've got nothing to hide, there is no reason to bury this report. And yet, burying this report is exactly what Trump, Republicans, Michael Gaetz, and the rest of the House Ethics Committee Republicans are doing. Which leads me to the second piece of breaking news here. According to Politico, the Senate Judiciary Committee Democrats have officially requested the evidentiary file from the FBI's investigation into Matt Gaetz's alleged child sex trafficking. The letter reads, "We request that you provide to the Senate Committee on the Judiciary the complete evidentiary file, including all FD 302 forms memorializing interviews in the closed investigation of former Congressman Matt Gaetz's alleged sex trafficking of minors. As you are aware, President-elect Trump has announced his intent to nominate Mr. Gaetz to be Attorney General. The Senate has a constitutional duty to provide advice and consent on presidential nominees, and it is crucial that we review all the information necessary to fulfill his duty as we consider Mr. Gaetz's nomination. The grave public allegations against Mr. Gaetz speak directly to his fitness to serve as the chief law enforcement officer for the federal government. The unanswered questions regarding Mr. Gaetz's alleged conduct are particularly significant, given that his associate, Joel Greenberg, pleaded guilty to the sex trafficking charge for which Mr. Gaetz was also investigated." The move comes amid the expectation that the incoming Trump administration's DOJ won't be cooperative if the investigation was to continue. In fact, not only that, but there's further concern that if Gaetz does become AG, then far from this investigation into him continuing, which of course isn't going to happen, we'd actually be more likely to see retribution for those involved. As AG, Gaetz would be able to order his file in exactly the same way that the Senate Democrats are ordering it, only while the Senate Democrats don't have a vested interest in retribution against the witnesses, Matt Gaetz does, and he would have access to all of their personal information and could use it to go after them if he wanted to. And if you don't think that Matt Gaetz would do that, then you don't know Matt Gaetz. Now, there's an obvious issue here. If the Senate Judiciary Committee Democrats are requesting the file from the FBI and the federal government opted not to charge Matt Gaetz, won't they just receive back a file that shows no wrongdoing? Not exactly. Here's Glenn Kirshner explaining why the DOJ's refusal to charge Matt Gaetz does not necessarily mean that Gaetz did nothing wrong.
You know, it's not unusual. Take it from a 30-year career prosecutor. Crimes are committed quite often, and there is never a charge brought. Sometimes the crimes aren't solved. We don't know who the perpetrator is. Sometimes we have strong evidence of who the perpetrator is. However, we don't have enough admissible evidence in court to actually secure an indictment. Sometimes we have enough to secure an indictment, but we don't believe we have a reasonable likelihood of success on the merits. In other words, a guilty verdict at trial. So there is this sliding scale, and the evidence moves up as you make your way through the criminal justice process. This is from a prosecutor's perspective. So, he may very well have committed crimes. Indeed, what we know is that a federal judge ruled there was probable cause that Matt Gaetz had evidence of crime on his cell phone, in his cell phone, and it was seized and it was searched. But there were some potential witness problems, is what I have heard over the years in the case, and the Department of Justice couldn't quite get to a point where they believed they had proof beyond a reasonable doubt such that they could win a conviction at trial. Not unusual in my experience that cases fall out along that sliding scale of evidence before they ever make it to trial.
So, do I wish that this DOJ wasn't more focused on preventing the optics of politicization than actually upholding the law? Of course I do. But let's not delude ourselves into thinking that a lack of an indictment is somehow akin to a finding of innocence, because it's not. Now, for what it's worth, while I think that the House Ethics Republicans are content to bury this report to help Matt Gaetz, what the Senate won't stand for is allowing this to skate by as far as consideration of Matt Gaetz's AG nomination is concerned. Something tells me that their vetting will probably include wanting to see whether or not he trafficked a minor. And my prediction is as useless as the next guy's, but I think it's unlikely that it won't eventually find its way to the general public if 47 Democratic senators have their hands on it. And let's not also forget that Monday, a hacker gained access to a file containing the sworn depositions of 2 women involved in the investigation into Matt Gaetz. That file included the testimony of the woman who alleges she had sex with Gaetz when she was 17 years old in 2017, as well as the testimony of a second woman who said she witnessed the encounter, and the information is unredacted according to the source. Meaning, if it's not the Ethics Committee that releases the report, it may be the Democratic senators. And if it's not the Democratic senators, it may very well be the hacker. Either way, if Gaetz's goal was to avoid all of this, he may be coming up short. And look, I've been pretty outspoken about the fact that the next few years are going to be chaotic, which means that it's incumbent on the rest of us to stay vigilant and, perhaps more importantly, to be organized. That means when Donald Trump throws spaghetti on the wall in the form of, a dozen unqualified nominees like we're seeing right now, rather than all of us screaming in all different directions, that we stay focused and pick our battles here. Opposing somebody like Matt Gaetz as the Attorney General, the top law enforcement official in the United States of America, is a hill worth dying on. It is something worth getting organized around. So I'll continue to stay on top of this issue, and I'd suggest that those watching right now continue to kick up dirt in whatever way you can, whether it's online or even by contacting your senators. What we do during the Trump administration matters, and how we do it matters. So as long as we have a say, this issue is not going to go away. Before you go, just a quick note, if you'd like to see more of my content, which is always free of advertising, sponsorships, and paywalls, please make sure to subscribe to this channel using the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you'd like to support my work even further, you can grab a copy of my instant #1 New York Times selling book, Shameless, available for sale right now. That link is also on this screen. Thanks so much for watching.